All the wanderings of the human consciousness from source reality. It has eliminated the compelling features of source reality through the application of the logical mind and the persistent belief in the language of limitation that flows from the external control of the hierarchy. Source realities is hidden behind language, has gradually become illuminated by the prophets of your world, and has thus taken on the image of language rather than expression of its compelling features. Language is the purveyor of limitation. It is the pawn of tyranny and entrapment. Virtually all entities within the time-space universe desire to preserve a dependence upon a hierarchy that stretches between the individual and the compelling features of source reality. It is this hierarchy that utilizes language as a form of structural limitation, though in relative terms, it can appear to be liberating and empowering. Source reality is the dwelling place of First Source, and it dances outside the construct of any language. It completes within itself and has a singular purpose of demonstrating the collective potential of all species within the universe of wholeness. It is the archetype of perfection. It is the standard bearer of each entity's innate design and ultimate destiny. Its essence is so far beyond conception that the human instrument's tendency is to resort to the language of external, to define source reality as the ultimate hierarchy. The hierarchy, though the purveyance of an evolution saviorship model of existence, have attempted to guide the development of all entities to the universe of wholeness. The connection between the individual and source is subtly undermined through the layers of language, belief system, manipulation, and ritual controls designed by the hierarchies to intervene between the spiritual essence of the entities and their source, First Source. Each individual must know themselves to be free of all forms of external reliance. This is not to imply that one should not trust others or band together in alliance of friendship and community. Just as simply a warning that relative truth is constantly changing and shifting in the hands of those who desire to control, and even though their motives may be goodwill, it is still a form of control. When the hierarchy withholds information, to interpret senders for relative truth are positioned to acquire and maintain power rather than dispensing the empowerment of source reality and equality. There are so many layers of relative truth that if you listen to the language of externals, you will most likely abandon your own power in favor of the proclamation of language. Language is seductive to the ego's drive for power and control, as well as the mind's inclination to surrender and believe in the language of externals. It can lure the unexpecting into believe images and ideas, real or imagined, for the sake of holding individuals in bondage to a lesser truth, or to keep individuals supporting the hierarchy when it no longer serves a purpose. The time is fast approaching when the veils of control at all levels of the hierarchy will be rendered obsolete by entities who are destined to pull down the veils and allow sovereign power to prevail over hierarchical power. Entities exist now that have woven their future existence with terrors and are destined to demonstrate the truth of source reality, equality among all entities at all levels of expression. It will become the fundamental purpose of the hierarchy to slowly remove this barrier to equality in such a way that the hierarchy appears to be savior of consciousness rather than the guard of consciousness. And there are those present who will ensure that the current falls swiftly for those who are ready to be equal with their source and are willing to skirt the hierarchy's tangled pathways and embrace their divinity as sovereign expressions of source reality. The hierarchy represents diverse interests, perceptions of realities, and motives. It is this diversity that caused the hierarchy to become ineffective in leading individuals to their equal status with First Source. However, this diversity is also what permits the hierarchy to attract and initially awaken such a breadth of individuals to their spiritual energies and intuitive centers. The hierarchy, though, has trapped itself in diversity, invested specialization that prevents it from evolving from an arduous ladder of evolution to a joyless river of light that is aligned with the purpose of empowering entities to source reality. Equality. I think it's anonymous when you say equality in reality. The saviorship concept results from the feeling of inadequacy that constantly surges within the mass consciousness of humanity through the genetic mind. These feelings are related to the fragmentation of the human instrument and its abilities, while fragmented, to fully grasp its wholeness perspective and reach into its divine origin, your divine origin, and accept the self equal with First Source. Thus ensues the seemingly endless search to be saved from an inadequacy and insecurity that results from the fragmentation of the human instrument. Their motive to evolve consciousness derived from the feeling that being less than whole, and in particular the feeling of its being disconnected from First Source due to an imperfect judgment caused by the fragmentation of the human instrument. It is through this feeling that the fragmentation perpetuates itself for the entire species, that is passed on to the genetic mind and is shared foundation of the human instrument. The genetic mind of the human species is the most powerful component of the hierarchy and formed by the very condition of the human instrument living within this three-dimensional, five-sensory context that is all-consuming. There are exceptions, but the majority is within this limitation. So when the entities initially enter a human instrument at birth, it is immediately fragmented to a physical, emotion, and mental spectrum of perception and expression. And from that day forward, the entity is carefully conditioned to adapt and navigate within this three-dimensional, five-sensory context of Terra Earth. In effect, the entity purposely fragmented its consciousness in order to experience separation from wholeness. And in this state of separation, the entity has handicapped itself for the purpose of new experience and deeper understanding of the primal blueprint or grand visions of First Source. And through this deeper understanding, the entities can, through the human instrument, transform the three-dimensional context into a self-aware, integrated component of the universe of wholeness. This magnificent and purposive endeavor produces the urge within the human instrument to seek out its wholeness and re-experience its divine connection to First Source. This search, in large measure, is the fuel that drives the individual to seek out and explore the evolution saviorship model of existence. It provides individuals with the motivation to seek help and guidance from a specific subgroup of the hierarchy and develop the sense of belonging and unity. It is this very sense of belonging and unity that helps to catalyze a growing awareness of the underlying union between the human instrument, the entity consciousness, the universe of wholeness, source intelligence, and First Source. This is why the evolution saviorship model is so critical as a component to the grand experiment. Each has its purpose. It is the stage where the human instrument develops a sense of unity and belonging, a sense of relationship to some grand and encompassing vision. And this is why the hierarchy nurtures saviors. It's also why the feeling of inadequacies and insecurity are developed and nurtured by the hierarchy at the same time. It actually hastens the unification of humanity, which in turn will hasten and lead the unification of humanity into the universe of wholeness. Spiritual leaders are able to peer deeply beneath the surface reality of life and experience how intricately connected to every life form is, and how this composite of life is intelligent, far beyond the human instrument's capability to both perceive and express. It is because of this condition that spiritual leaders can only interpret reality to their personal abilities to perceive and express life-dimensional depth and luminous experience. No one was able to articulate life-dimensional depth and breadth with the tools of language. At best, you can only describe the interpretation or this impression. Most of the experience is felt to the heart or the whole being. So every human is able to peer beneath the surface reality of life and perceive and express their personal interpretation of the universe of wholeness in varying degrees. They only require time and intention to develop their own interpretation. And this is precisely what all the great spiritual leaders have taught. Life's deeper meaning is not an absolute to be experienced by the chosen few, but an evolving dynamic experience that wears as many phases as there are life forms. No life forms or species has an exclusive portal into the universe of wholeness in which First Source expresses itself in its majesty. The portal is shared with all because First Source is within all things. Great spiritual leaders of terrors have all in their own ways interpreted the universe of wholeness and humanity's role therein. In doing so, their interpretation, because they articulated with authority and depth of insight, became a target of debate among various subgroups of the hierarchy. This debate and inquiry process creates a polarity of belief. A sympathetic constituency will emerge to defend and embellish their particular leader's interpretation, while everyone else will hold it in contempt of previous held belief. This particular method of creating a religion is fixated on a savior, prophet's interpretation of the universe of wholeness, is unique to a species exploring the evolution saviorship mode of existence. The spiritual leaders are recognized as great prophets or saviors that have produced a vision of the universe of wholeness beyond what was constantly defined by the hierarchy. They create a new portal to the universe of wholeness, and are willing to share their vision at the expense of debate and probable ridicule. These men and women were the gateways for humanity to explore new facets of itself, to engage a part of its oversoul or universal consciousness that was essential at that particular time in its evolutionary cycle. But the leader's interpretation too often become interpreted by the followers to a desire to create a religion or sect, and the vision quietly recedes into the hands of the hierarchy, where it becomes devitalized by the very fact that it is connected to a massive structure that both protects and promotes it. First Source is not connected to organization. First Source is connected to individuals. So the hierarchy is unconnected to Source in a vital and dynamic way. Hierarchy is more connected to its own collective desire to help, to serve, to perform a function that allows the use of power to drive towards the vision of its leader. This is not wrong or misguided in itself. It is a part of the primal blueprint that orchestrates the unfoldment of consciousness from prime source to entity, and entity to collective source. This bio of integration breeds wholeness and cascading beauty within source intelligence. What the hierarchy has loosely labeled as spirit comes close as the symbol of source intelligence. Source intelligence inhabits all fields of vibration as extension of source. It is the emissary of First Source that interweaves with the hierarchy as its counterbalance. Source intelligence is the factor of integrity and alignment, and ensures the hierarchy is serving its purpose within the primal blueprint. Source intelligence is in effect the scientist who oversees the grand experiment and enables the criteria, select the variables, and monitor the results and evaluate the alternate outcomes in the laboratory of time and space. The grand experiment is the ongoing transformation and expansion of source intelligence through all entities in all dimensions of existence. It is the purpose of the grand experiment to test alternative models of experiments existent to determine with some certainty the model that is best able to unify consciousness without impinging on the sovereignty of these entities and first source. The grand experiment is composed of many distinct stages that interlink, leading to the great mystery. And most of these different stages are being simultaneously played out. I can't say that word. Simultaneously played out within the time-space universe, in order to prepare the universe for the impending expansion of source reality in all dimensions of existence. So in Earth, this is the stage of existence that promotes the clear connection of individual consciousness to the compelling features of source reality without the intervention of a hierarchy of any kind. This is when fables and myths of history step into the light and become known as they truly are and have been. This is the time when language will be transmuted into a new form of communication that exhibits the compelling features of source reality in an artistry of energy and vibration that breaks down all barriers of control. Time to recognize that the hierarchy extends throughout the cosmos to the very borders of this discovery, and its branches extend from very far star system, every known dimension, and virtually all life forms are leaves and leaves of this vast cosmological tree. And this constitutes the grand indoctrination of species, spirits, planets, and stars, as they each evolve through the branches of the tree. The hierarchy is an assemblage of externals that desire to invest its energy in support of a subgroup that has nested somewhere within the greatest of all structure, the hierarchy. Service is the operational motive of the hierarchy, and in most cases translates into the concept of saviorship and teacher-student ordering of the universe. The hierarchy is composed of all entities of all motives that have linked their energies into subgroups. The roots of the tree abound in the soil of genetic memory and subconscious instinct. At the base of the tree is the first branch sprout, and they are the oldest, representing the native religion of the species. The middle branches are the orthodox religion and institution. The upper branch represents the contemporary beliefs that are newly emerging throughout the universe. The whole tree, in the definition, is the hierarchy, and its seed was initially conceived and planted, nurtured by the source intelligence for the purpose of stimulating the grand experiment. This experiment of transformation versus evolution. Evolution is the arduous, ongoing process of shifting position within the hierarchy, always assessing your present position in relation to a new one that beckons you. Transformation is simply the recognition that there are accelerated pathways that bypass the hierarchy, leading to a sovereign mastership rather than interdependent saviorship, and that these new pathways can be accessed through direct experience of the equality, tone vibration that is present with all entities. Now, this tone vibration is not what is more commonly known as the music of the spirit or the vibration of spirit moving through the universe in resonance to source intention. Now, this tone is like the mess. It's a vibration that holds together the three principles of the transformational process. Like love, it is the essence, it's the spirit. It's a tone that cannot hear, but you might access in feelings or a wave. And it is the universe relationship to gratitude, observance of source in all things, and a nurturance of life. If you listen to this tone and you get it, you might cry. That is the effect of the tone. for one instance. So the application of these life principles in a specific equation of conduct decouples removed entities from the controlling elements of the hierarchy. So how can the hierarchy act in the role of the interpreted center of truth without manipulating entities and obscuring their free will? So the grand experiments were designed with free will as its primary method of obtaining authentic information that can be used to expand source reality to all dimensions of existence. Free will is the thread of authenticity that imbues values in the various tests within the grand experiment. The hierarchy of any other external structure never jeopardizes free will, though it may seem to. Only the entity can choose the reality, and this is the fundamental principle of free will. Free will is not obscure simply because an entity is presented with an alternate reality or relative truth that delay its realization of source equality. It is the choice of the entity to invest this self in an external account of reality instead of dwelling within its own resources and creating a reality that is sovereign. The value of free will is always expanding as you move towards sovereignty, and like manners, is always diminishing as you move towards external dependence. So the choice between sovereign or external dependence is the basis of free will, and there is no structure or external source that can eliminate this basic choice. It is an inward choice that, regardless of outward circumstances, is incapable of being denied by anything external. The universe of wholeness encompasses all dimensions, including source reality, and all realities contained therein. In this comprehensible diversity, each entity is provided a structure that defines their free will in terms of its relation of source reality. Each of these structures varies in latitude of choice, but each is connected in the superstructure of the hierarchy. The structure realities of source reality is where free will was initially conceived, and when the principle expanded into time-space universe as the thread of authenticity, it became increasingly independent upon the entity's recognition of its wholeness in relation to source intelligence. Now, if the entity was fragmented into component parts, its comprehension of free wills was limited to that which the hierarchy circumscribed, defined. And anything that can be defined is not real. It's an illusion. Anything that can be, you should say, separated out from part from oneness drains much resource, and by the high level of consciousness that can be rather used to sustained. So back to this. If the entity is a conscious collective, realizing its sovereign wholeness, the principle of free will was a form of structure that was unnecessary. You will see that like a fire in a summer's day. When entities are unknowing of their wholeness, structure will occur as a form of self-imposed security. And through this ongoing development of a structured and ordered universe, entities define their borders, their limits, to the expression of their insecurity. They gradually became pieces of their wholeness, and like shards of glass from a beautiful vase, they bear little resemblance to their aggregate beauty. If you were to perceive the origin of your existence, you would undoubtedly see how vast the entity is. If you could pierce through the veils that cover your destiny, you would understand how much vaster you will become. Between these 2 points of existence, origin and destiny, the entities is always the vibrant container of source intelligence. It has willingly allowed itself to explore the time-space universe as an outpost of First Source. Therefore, while the hierarchy may obscure the entity's comprehension of his wholeness, it is the entities who has surrendered by choice to listen to the language of limitation, proclamation of externals, and become seduced by the model of evolution and sabership.